everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Victoria the Bard, where I tell stories of the fantastical kind. Now, I've been saying a lot of my stories are rather special lately, and that's because I've been trying new things to express these stories, and one of these new techniques is shadow puppetry, or should I say, magic. Magic. Anyway, now the story I'm going to be telling you all today is called The Navigator's Contact. It is a brave seafaring adventure that starts with a Captain Quentin Pascal. Now, Captain Pascal was the captain of the Pilar de Lune, a trading ship that had been turned into a marvelous treasure hunting ship. He and his crew set sail for many islands, for buried treasure, for anything that had been promised adventure, and all their searches had been unsuccessful. All of them, every single one. But the crew and the captain didn't mind. They simply liked journeying on these adventures. So, one day, they went into port, yet again, from another unfruitful search for buried treasure, when he met an old mariner. Now, the old mariner told him that there was buried treasure far from here, at least 3 weeks of sailing, but if he headed directly southeast, he would be able to make it. It was wealthy treasure, so much treasure that he could hardly imagine it. The captain loved this idea and said that he would set sail at once. So he turned to his ship, right in the harbor. But the crew hollered after him, Captain, we have no supplies." He said, "We have enough supplies to last us from our last journey. We'll be fine." The crew hollered after him, "But Captain, some of us want to stay on land for a few days." He said, "You can stay on land when your pockets are filled and dripping with gold." Then one finally called after him, "But Captain, we have no navigator intelligent enough to navigate without any map." Now this made him pause, because this was very, very true. And so he turned around to the crowd behind him and said, "Who here is a navigator who wants to be wealthy beyond comprehension?" Nobody answered, except for one young man by the name of Tristram Gale. He said, "I am a navigator who hasn't been wrong once. I don't intend to be wrong on this voyage either." The captain asked him, "What do you request for your guidance, for your help?" And he said, "Only a fair share of a treasure and a few simple requests. I want to be positioned on the crow's nest every night, all night. And nobody must come up there while I'm up there." Captain said, "Deal." And they ended the whole thing with a simple handshake. Now the crew, who had gotten supplies while this whole thing was taking place, rounded themselves up and got on the boat. It's fast sailing all the way southeast for the entire day until finally, at sunset, Tristram climbed the mast. Now, as the captain was walking past to go on to his own quarters, he thought he heard somebody talking to themselves. And he looked up, and it was Mr. Gale. He couldn't make out what he was saying, and so he shrugged and went on to his own chambers. That morning, Tristram, with dark circles under his eyes, came back down the mast. He told the captain they were to sail exactly south for the entire day, and then he would come back with more instructions the next morning. The captain asked him how he knew all this. Tristram only replied with, "Please, no questions, am I excused?" The captain said yes. Tristram went back down deck. It was smooth sailing for the rest of the day. Blue skies, white fluffy clouds, everything absolutely favorable. And then, about noontime, Tristram came back up onto the deck, and then at sunset once again climbed the mast. This time, the captain came back, strained his ears to hear what Tristram was talking about up at the top of the crow's nest, but when he couldn't hear anything, shrugged, and went back to his quarters. This same path would follow for a little more than 2 weeks. Up and down Tristram went every night, and every day he would come back with new instructions on where they would set sail. Until finally, the captain, bubbling with questions, with curiosity, decided it was about time he broke his deal with the Navigator. That night, after Mr. Gale had already gone to the top of the crow's nest, the captain began to climb. He climbed and he climbed until he was about to the middle. Then he stopped and strained to hear what was going on inside the crow's nest. And sure enough,
from your spotted
he heard
curtain,
two voices.
Gaze upon the world. Underneath your shining feet, all that lies unfurled. Tell me of your journeys across the sky each night. Oh, sing to me your songs, my maiden of moonlight.
From my silver throne above, I watch the world asleep. Over lands and seas my silver beams in silent vigil keep. I've heard your songs, your heartfelt pleas beneath the starry night, and I return your serenade, O seeker of my light.
Captain was furious. There had been a stowaway upon his own ship, and he didn't know about it. And so he climbed the rest of the way up just to see who this mysterious woman was. When he got to the top, he peeked over the edge and immediately recognized the Navigator. But there was a woman there, a shining woman in silk that shined like moonlight, and pale skin, and a voice that echoed across the very night sky. They talked in rhymes back and forth, lovely rhymes, beautiful rhymes. Finally, Tristram asked her what the captain had been waiting to hear. He asked her, "What next? Where shall we go from now?" And she replied with, "You must go directly west, right at sunset, or you'll head right into the middle of a terrible storm. You'll pass through it, but if you follow west, then you will be safe." Tristram thanked her, but suddenly the captain's hand slipped, causing his whereabouts to be known to both the woman and Tristram. Tristram whipped around at the captain and asked, "What are you doing here?" The captain was at a loss for words, but the woman in the moonlight just sighed brokenly and said, "You broke your promise." And she disappeared. Tristram hollered at the captain, "There went your hope. You had a choice between your treasure or your curiosity, and you chose wrong." The captain, he didn't know what to say. He knew that the Navigator was right, and so he apologized and went back down. The captain stayed in his quarters most of the night. He replayed the instance over and over again. He heard the Navigator and the woman's voices echoing in his ears. So finally at sunrise, he came out, took the helm. He made sure to steer the boat directly towards west, with the sun right behind them. Sure enough, a storm hit. It was a horrible storm. The sky turned dark gray. Fog rolled across the edges of the waves. They couldn't see the sun at all. But Tristram, he came up on deck. The captain asked for his help. Tristram shook his head. He said that there was no hope of ever getting through this storm without his maiden of moonlight, who the captain had scared away. Captain, he put his hand on Tristram's shoulder and said, "I didn't hire the maiden. I hired you. You are our navigator. Now tell us what to do." Tristram turned this over in his mind, then nodded, and told the captain to hold the helm directly west. No matter what, they could not avoid the storm. They had to go through it. Everybody said this was mad. This is an insane idea. The captain believed in him. And sure enough, they cut through right in the edge of the storm and made it out safely. And whenever they did make it out safely, they looked over the horizon and saw a bright green mass of land, the island they were looking for. So the crew docked on the island. Now by that time, it was about sunset, and so the crew made up campfires and decided not to search for the night. Now while they were camping, the captain looked over and saw the navigator climbing the highest tree. So the captain from a distance watched the navigator, wondering if he would ever be able to get in touch with his maiden again. And after, about an hour, half an hour maybe, Tristram called for the captain from atop the tree. So the captain made his way up to the tree, called up, "What do you need?" Tristram replied, "She wants to see you." And so, Captain hurried up the tree. When the captain got to the top, the navigator and the maiden was waiting for him. He talked to the maiden and "I'm deeply sorry if I scared you last night. It was me who broke your friend's promise, not him." She replied with, "I know. I've forgiven him, and I've forgiven you. Now, if you leave immediately with your crew, I will guide you to the treasure you seek." The captain nodded excitedly. They all climbed down. She disappeared and turned into a single streak of moonlight that led the way down through the forest, down through the jungles of the strange island. And so the crew and the captain and the navigator hiked and hiked and hiked all the way through the island until about sunrise. They came to a great clearing in the trees. And there was a single spot of moonlight. Pointing directly down below and above it was the maiden. She nodded at the navigator. She nodded at the captain. The captain saluted her. She disappeared, and the crew started to dig. They dug and dug well into the day. Finally, they hit treasure chests. Large treasure chests, so many of them that they crowded the decks of the ship itself. So, finally, with a bountiful journey, the crew sailed back home, gold overflowing their pockets, and a new crewmate, Tristram Gale, the navigator, and his maiden of moonlight. There you have it, the navigator's contact. I hadn't done a seafaring tale in a while. That was rather fun. Well, thank you for watching my attempt at shadow puppetry. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. Hopefully I'll do it a bit better. Tune in sometime else for tales of magic and mystery to rattle your bones and make excitement course through your veins. Fare thee well, my friends.